Michigan could make a good case to be the Midwest's most prominent birding state, ranking 9th in the country for total eBird checklists submitted, and 26th for the number of birds observed. The Wolverine State is famous for hosting the majority of the breeding grounds for Kirtland's warblers within its boundaries, and plenty of other incredible birds can be found in the diverse array of habitats in Michigan. The state famously borders 4 of the 5 Great Lakes. Southern Michigan has wetlands, prairies, sandy forests, and large swaths of deciduous trees. As you travel north in Michigan, coniferous trees become more prominent, dominating many areas. Despite the many delightful habitats that can be found in Michigan, there are dozens of bird species that can regularly be observed no matter where you travel in the state. In this video, I'm going to reveal 20 common bird species that you can expect to see in the Wolverine State. Whether you're a prospective tourist interested in knowing some of Michigan's birds, or a Michigander who wishes to learn more about the birds in your backyard, this video is for you. Today's lesson, common birds in Michigan. Unlike nearby states like Ohio, Michigan does not have a bird that is observed in more than 50% of all eBird checklists. The blue jay is the bird species that comes closest in Michigan, being observed on 47.67% of eBird checklists in the state. That's right, these curious, cunning corvids are the most commonly observed bird in Michigan, and with the bountiful forests that can be found throughout much of Michigan, it's no surprise why. Some of Michigan's blue jays are migratory, vacating parts of the state in winter, or coming to spend winters in Michigan after breeding in places like Ontario. During their fall migrations from September through October, up to 70% of eBird checklists include blue jays. Blue jays are the most scarce in January, only detected on about 38% of eBird checklists. But if you've got a bird feeder, you could certainly see hungry blue jays stopping by, especially if you have their favorite food, peanuts. Black-capped chickadees come in as the second most commonly observed Michigan birds, being detected on 46.54% of eBird checklists. These lovable little songbirds thrive in a variety of wooded habitats, from tiny parks to massive forests. Black-capped chickadees are another species that regularly visits bird feeders, where they happily munch on sunflower seeds, peanuts, and other goodies. February is the time of year when chickadees are most frequently detected, being observed on 57% of eBird checklists as they begin singing to establish territories. Black-capped chickadees are the most scarce in summer, when they lay low as they raise their families. American robins are right behind chickadees in terms of how often they're observed in Michigan, detected on 46.46% of eBird checklists, making Michigan's state bird the third most regularly observed bird species in the state. By the way, Michigan, American robin over Kirtland's warbler for your state bird? What are you doing? Anyway, while chickadees are pretty consistently detected throughout the year in Michigan, American robins are completely opposite, being scarce in most of the state during winter and absolutely abundant during summer. For instance, American robins are observed on only 10% of eBird checklists in early January, but 72% of eBird checklists come May. These numbers don't paint the whole picture in Michigan, though, as American robins may be absent from much of the Upper Peninsula in winter, but fairly common in southern Michigan at the same time of year. If you want to find robins during winter in Michigan, look for them on trees and shrubs with small, tasty fruits for them to eat. The dazzling northern cardinal is the last species observed on more than 40% of Michigan eBird checklists, registering a 44.7% rate of detection in the state. Cardinals aren't migratory, so their numbers are pretty consistent throughout the year. Still, there are some major discrepancies. Late April into early May is the time of year when cardinals are most regularly observed, thanks to birders frequently hearing their beautiful songs. Cardinals are quiet in late fall, and they're only observed on about 36% of eBird lists in much of November. Those who love feeding birds know that cardinals will readily visit bird feeders. You can also make your yard a cardinal haven by planting native shrubs where they can nest and offering their favorite foods like sunflower and safflower seeds at your bird feeders. Mourning doves are the fifth most commonly observed Michigan birds, being detected on 39.88% of eBird checklists. Some Michigan mourning doves are migratory, traveling to the state to breed, but heading south to spend winters in warmer locations. The Upper Peninsula, specifically, loses most of its mourning doves during winter, but some may take a chance and stick around yards with consistent food and shelter. Late July into mid-August offers birders the best chance of observing mourning doves, with detection rates around 48%. This is the time of year in which many mourning doves are finished breeding, and they happily perch on power lines adjacent to tasty foods like sunflowers and other seed-producing plants. By October, many of the migratory mourning doves have departed, but there are still plenty of year-round residents that stick around in much of Michigan. American goldfinches are Michigan's sixth most common bird. Like blue jays, robins, and mourning doves, goldfinches have a partially migratory population in Michigan, with many leaving Michigan during winter. American goldfinches are entirely absent from some parts of the Upper Peninsula during winter, but it's the month of March that has the lowest detection rate for goldfinches, hovering around 22.5% for some of the month. Just like mourning doves, American goldfinches are most common in late July into August, with detection rates up to 54.6%. American goldfinches will gladly visit yards that have bird feeders offering thistle, Niger, and sunflower seeds. Remember, goldfinches wear bright plumages in the breeding season compared to the drab, non-breeding plumage. American crows are the seventh most commonly observed Michigan birds, detected on 37.95% of eBird lists. Most of Michigan's crows are residents, though some leave the state during winter. Likewise, American crows that breed in places like Ontario may spend winters in Michigan. In any case, birders won't have much trouble finding crows in Michigan at any point of the year. Peak crow detections are in March when birds move north in small numbers as they return to their breeding grounds. American crows are adaptable, thriving in urban environments or rural agricultural landscapes. Crows can regularly be found along the edges of forests, but they don't tend to venture deep into extensive woodlands. Highly intelligent, these brilliant birds may even stop by your bird feeders for a snack. Red-winged blackbirds are ubiquitous in Michigan during the breeding season, but almost entirely absent in the winter. They display the clearest migratory tendencies of any bird on this list so far, but they still remain Michigan's eighth most commonly observed bird, with a detection rate of 36.31% throughout the year. However, that number is deceptive, as most birders will struggle to find a single red-winged blackbird during winter, especially in the Upper Peninsula. Conversely, birders will struggle to avoid red-winged blackbirds in the breeding season, when detection rates skyrocket to 67% in May. This isn't a species that spends significant amounts of time in most yards, but they do eat from bird feeders occasionally. Red-winged blackbirds are quite adaptable, breeding almost anywhere, with water and/or dense enough vegetation for a nest. The first waterfowl to make this list is the Canada goose, coming in as Michigan's ninth most commonly observed bird, with 34.4% of eBird checklists recording them. Canada geese famously fly south for the winter. At least that's what media would have you believe. In reality, many Canada geese do vacate Michigan in winter, but plenty stick around. Even the frigid Upper Peninsula hosts Canada geese in areas with open water. Contrary to what many would assume, winter is not the time of year in which this species is most scarce. It's actually late June, being observed in only about 14% of eBird checklists. Spring migration features abundant Canada goose numbers, with the peak migration happening from mid-March through mid-April. Michigan's most common woodpecker is also its smallest, with the downy woodpecker being observed on 34.07% of eBird lists in the state. Downy woodpeckers don't have a migratory bone in their bodies. In fact, winter tends to be the time of year when they're most commonly detected. That's a contrast to summer when downy woodpeckers are low-key while raising their families in a cozy tree cavity. Much like black-capped chickadees, downy woodpeckers are found in woodlands big and small. Males and females look almost identical, but notice that males have a red patch on the back of their heads. Downy woodpeckers are regular bird feeder visitors, especially for those who offer treats like suet. Mallards are observed on less than 1/3 of eBird checklists, but with a 31.01% detection rate, birders have a great chance of finding the species. The classic duck male mallards sport vibrant green heads, while females have well-camouflaged plumage with intricate patterns. Summer can be a tough time to find this species as females hunker down at their nests as they try to raise new generations of mallards. Mallards are not fazed by Michigan's winters, with many thousands wintering in the Upper Peninsula alone. Immense numbers of mallards can be observed on spring migration as they push north through the state. A favorite at backyard bird feeders, white-breasted nuthatches delight Michiganders everywhere, and with a 30.97% eBird detection rate in the state, everyone can enjoy this species. Versatile in their habitat use, if an area has trees, then it probably has white-breasted nuthatches. Although their red-breasted nuthatch counterparts are more common in coniferous forests, white-breasted nuthatches can still be found in this habitat. Mid-February is the time of year when white-breasted nuthatches are detected at the highest rate, as their yank 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 songs ring out through wooded areas. They love visiting bird feeders, but they'll typically stay long enough just to grab a seat in their bills before flying off to enjoy it elsewhere. Red-bellied woodpeckers are medium-sized woodpeckers that are gradually expanding their range north in Michigan. Although they've always been common in the lower peninsula, this species was historically scarce in the upper peninsula. Nowadays, red-bellied woodpeckers are regular in most of the Upper Peninsula, save for the Keweenaw Peninsula, where this species remains an uncommon sight. Males and females both have tawny undersides with black and white zebra-patterned wings, but females lack the red hood possessed by males. Observed on 30.15% of eBird checklists, red-bellied woodpeckers are Michigan's 13th most commonly observed bird. Like downy woodpeckers, they happily visit bird feeders, especially if suet or peanuts are present. Song sparrows can be easily overlooked. They're not flashy and they often stay concealed as they forage along the ground. Fortunately, these birds have a lot to say, and birders who learn their songs can readily identify them. Song sparrows are abundant breeders in much of Michigan, but they vacate much of the state in winter. Spotting one north of Saginaw during winter is uncommon, and the UP, forget about it. Song sparrows are quite rare here in winter. At the onset of March, song sparrows push north through Michigan and persist in large numbers until their southbound migrations are complete by early November. Song sparrows occasionally feed below bird feeders, but looking for them in thick vegetation like prairies or marshes will yield better results. The first invasive species on this list, European starlings, are, fortunately, not quite as ubiquitous in Michigan compared to other states. They were scarce in much of the UP until a few decades ago, but can now regularly be found throughout all reaches of Michigan throughout the year. European starlings are the 16th most commonly observed Michigan bird, reported on just over a quarter of all eBird checklists. Prolific cavity nesters, they can quickly take over a bluebird house if you're not careful. When starlings show up to bird feeders, they often bring friends, and few birds stand a chance against these aggressive creatures as they gobble up the tastiest morsels. Right on the scaly heels of starlings are another invasive species, the house sparrow. House sparrows are Michigan's 17th most routinely observed bird species, detected on 24.53% of eBird checklists. House sparrows still don't have much of a footing in the UP, as the dense forests make it difficult for them to navigate this part of the state. In the lower peninsula, they're a regular sight at bird feeders where they often swarm a yard with dozens of birds. These ravenous songbirds can quickly deplete seeds from bird feeders, and like starlings, they easily outcompete most native birds at birdhouses. Common grackles are bold blackbirds that get a bad rap from some, as they can be a bit pushy whenever they visit bird feeders. Although they're not everyone's favorite bird, they are nonetheless an important native species whose populations are in decline. Even so, they're Michigan's 18th most commonly observed bird per eBird data. Like their red-winged blackbird relatives, common grackles vacate Michigan almost entirely in winter, being observed on less than 0.5% of eBird checklists in this season. Massive groups of grackles return to Michigan in March, and these songbirds quickly set up territories and raise young in shrubby habitat. By the end of October, most grackles have departed the state. Most Michigan birdwatchers enjoy seeing house finches when they show up to snack on sunflower seeds. But did you know that house finches aren't native to Michigan? It's true, these birds are native to the American Southwest, only spreading to Michigan after formerly captive birds established populations on the East Coast. Despite the fact that they're not native to Michigan, they've done quite well in the state, being observed on 21.1% of eBird lists, and becoming the 19th most commonly observed bird here. House finches have struggled to establish populations in the Upper Peninsula due to the region's harsh winters, but they're beginning to colonize urban areas in the UP. House finches are abundant in most of the Lower Peninsula. The northern flicker is the third woodpecker to make this list, but unlike downy and red-bellied woodpeckers, this species is migratory. At least some northern flickers are. From late March through April, and then September into early October, northern flickers can be observed in substantial numbers as they move through Michigan. They're common summer breeders in the state, seeking dead trees in which they can create cavities to raise their families. Northern flickers vacate the UP in winter, but they remain fairly common in the Lower Peninsula during this time of year. They don't visit bird feeders as regularly as the other woodpeckers I've mentioned, but they do enjoy a good block of suet. Dark-eyed juncos are opposite to many other birds on this list, as winter is the time of year in which they thrive in Michigan. During this time of year, juncos are found throughout the state, and they're among the most numerous birds to visit bird feeders. Dark-eyed juncos breed in much of northern Michigan. Anywhere north of the towns of Harrison and Gladwin support breeding populations of dark-eyed juncos. Very social, these sparrows typically are found in groups during the non-breeding season. When they visit bird feeders, you'll usually find them feeding on seeds that have spilled below the feeders onto the ground, as they feel safest here. Michigan is an excellent state for birding, with many feathered delights to be found in the state. Anyone interested in going birding in the Wolverine State can use this list of birds that I've provided here to be well on their way to learning Michigan's most familiar birds. Okay, birders, before you go, be sure to let me know what was your favorite of the birds that I listed in this video. Drop a comment below and tell me which bird that you loved the most. Be sure to subscribe for more awesome bird content. Thank you so much for watching. Class is now dismissed.